That took mad long for us to walk up here. Everybody make some noise. Really? We're talking about the future. Make some noise. Maybe it's the acoustics in this room.
Hey, thank you, Mike. Thank you. Hey, everyone. I am Nick. I am the head of growth marketing here at Profound. Very thankful, very excited that you're all here, and also very excited to be joined by Mike King, CEO of iPullRank. Give it up for Mike, please. And I'm also joined by Lily Ray, VP of Strategy and SEO at Amsive. And this is going to be a just casual chat between us. And so to kick things off, what I wanted to ask y'all to begin with, and Lily, I'll start with you. There's a lot of talk about SEO and AEO. And I think a lot of what people are taking away is there's lots of things on the internet of, oh, SEO is dead, things are different. I think there's a lot that we can learn from SEO and how SEO has changed, how Google has updated algorithms and its flows over time. And so the question I wanted to ask you both is that, what do you think we can learn from SEO and then bring forward? And then are there anything that we should be mindful of in this new era of AI search?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that my team and I are focused on right now, and that has kind of like revealed itself, I'd say, over the course of the year, as people have been having a lot of these discussions, is the extent to which search still matters for AI visibility. You know, I know Josh and Sartaj just talked about a lot of data around like how they're different and how maybe ChatGPT, for example, might cite some things that are not ranking as well in Google search. But in reality, being in Google or Bing is often a requirement in order to be surfaced in a lot of these large language model responses. So it's kind of a question of like which prompts, you know, require internet search, which prompts are more kind of native to, you know, the large language model training. But as far as like the things we're doing for SEO to be visible in both large language models as well as SEO, they tend to fundamentally be very similar in nature from what we're seeing. So I think, you know, I've been talking a lot about EEAT over the years, you know, experience, expertise, authority, and trust, having a unique perspective, which really kind of gets into what we were talking about with Reddit as well, offering unique insights, expertise, data, statistics, opinions. We're seeing that all these things really do kind of funnel into AI search as well. So I think the fundamentals of what we're doing from like a technical and kind of content strategy perspective are very similar, but there's definitely some like optimizations and fine tuning that you can do to be more visible in LLMs.
I have a different opinion. So I don't think SEO is dead. I think SEO is deprecated. And I think that was illustrated in the data that was just shared, where they said if you're #1 for Google, or if you're #1 in classic search, it was like, you know, what was it, like a 19% likelihood that you also showed up in a ChatGPT. And so that just inherently means that you can't just do what you do for classic SEO here. Yes, there is a lot of overlap, but a 19% chance, like, you're not going to pay me money to give you a 19% chance. You want something that's going to be more likely that you're going to actually be a part of the results. And I think effectively, the approaches that we need to take, again, very similar to what we do with SEO, but they're more matrixed approaches, right? So like when you think about the whole methodology here of the query fan out, that's not something that classically SEO has done, right? Like it's always been to some degree underlying in how the search engines worked, but most SEOs didn't know that, and that's reflected in the fact that most tools don't give you that information. And so if people are just doing SEO the way that they've always done it, they are not necessarily going to get better results. If instead you're taking the similar approaches of like, what are those queries? How do we get coverage for those queries? That is going to give you more of an 18% chance. So I think that, you know, effectively the SEOs of the world need to evolve, and the tooling in the space needs to evolve as well in order to be able to be more able to like call your shot about what it is you're going to do.
Okay, and then so with that in mind, how do you see the SEO job changing? Because historically, SEO mostly focused on, say, like on-page SEO is like maybe like primary with a bit of like technical, off-page SEO too. Now SEO includes Reddit, it's multimedia, it maybe even closer partnership with PR teams as well. And so how are you seeing the SEO job evolve over time? And then Mike, I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with the people in this room, like understanding that it can't be this siloed thing that it's been. Like SEO has largely been like, cool, sit there and do your meta tags and go get us links. Like you have to interface with these other teams. You have to interface with the social team. You have to interface with the video teams because YouTube is an input for a lot of these as well. So I think it's really that we have to mature as organizations, break down these silos so that we can be more effective at deploying this stuff.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I mean, I think like, Mike talked about in his article earlier this year about how AI search is evolving, like this concept of multimodality, right? So like LLMs are capable of understanding different types of media and video and audio and images and everything like that. So yes, to the extent that SEO is evolving into working with other teams, becoming more multimodal, thinking about how we can take a piece of like text content and repurposing that into different formats. I think SEO has always evolved. So I feel like this is just kind of a new way that we need to be thinking about things. We definitely need to become more integrated with different teams within our companies and within our agencies and everything. But I feel like I don't know, it's always been the case that we've had to kind of like learn new skills and adapt to new interfaces and everything like that. So I feel like for me, it's just kind of like a new manifestation of, like I work on a 35-person SEO team, different people have different skills, and all those skills are kind of like funneling together to figure out what works in this new landscape. But ultimately, it is about, being cross-channel and definitely repurposing existing content into those different formats, I would say.
Okay. And so when you're talking to maybe say executives either at some of your current clients or prospects or just kind of industry leaders, are there any misconceptions you think that executives have on how AI search is or maybe isn't changing traditional search, maybe in their aspect, or just like anything you think that needs clarification more? And Lily, again, I'll start with you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think there's a lot of hype right now and obviously a lot of demand for people to like figure out this AI thing. And there's been a lot of, in my opinion, dangerous framing around the role that SEO plays to the extent that, you can abandon SEO, you can fire your SEO team, and all you need to focus on now is GEO, right? That's not safe. It's not a good strategy. And I've heard of some companies literally doing just that. The problem with that is that a lot of the fundamentals of what we're doing from the SEO perspective, like technical SEO, like crawling, like page speed, page speed optimization, a lot of this stuff actually does matter for AI search as well. So this idea that you have to stop everything you're doing and start doing something completely new, I don't think it's that. I think it's you have to take all the skills that we already have and start to think about what are these new interfaces? Why is ChatGPT citing something that's not ranking in the top 10? Like it's kind of like an evolution of what we're already doing, but I wouldn't completely dramatically stop everything you've been doing for 20 plus years.
So again, slightly different opinion. In that I think it's fine that there's a lot of hype right now. I think it's fine that people who were like, oh, well, that SEO thing is just meta tags, whatever, are leaned in and interested in this because we have the opportunity to define what it is. We also have the opportunity to get away from a lot of the bad things that SEO has carried for the last 25 years. Like SEO doesn't have a good reputation. SEO is considered free traffic. So despite the fact that it is still, to this day, the biggest referral channel on the internet, it's invested in the least, which makes no sense. And so from my perspective, like I actually appreciate that we have the opportunity to reframe these, even though a lot of the tactics are very similar, because we now get to determine what seat we have at the table. When people are spending billions, trillions of dollars on AI, they are open to investing more in this GEO or AEO thing than they are in SEO. And I think it's a mistake for us as a community to be like, no, it's the same thing.
Why do you think that SEOs and marketers in general have been so bad at naming what this new thing is? Like the fact that we're even up here calling it AEO, GEO, whatever, like no one has named this.
Yeah. So it's for the very reason that we're just discussing. Like we've spent the last year infighting as an industry rather than like being a unified front and saying, here's what it is. Like a lot of people being like, no, it's just SEO. Other people being like, oh, it's GEO, AEO, whatever. I think that the market they've determined that it is now GEO. Like as soon as, Andreessen Horowitz was like, oh yeah, it's GEO. And then you start having articles about it. And then a lot of people that come to us for this work, they call it GEO. So it's just like basic keyword research that we tell our clients they should do, right? Like if everyone is searching and calling this thing something else, you should also reflect that in your content, in your marketing, so that you capture the right people. So I think that, we would have had the opportunity, again, if we had that unified front and said, this is the thing, then we would have been able to really define it. But now the market has done it for us.
Not much to add there. I think people have different perspectives. There's a few articles about why GEO is not a great name in and of itself, right? Because it has a lot of other meanings, it has a lot of history, it's geology, it's geography, right? So I think when you look up like best GEO companies, it's gonna tell you something about like literally geologists or something. So I feel like, yeah, there's a bit of a challenge there if that's gonna be the industry standard, but also many, different large language model tracking companies, some call it AEO, some call it GEO, some call it AI search optimization. I think we have to see how this pans out in terms of what the official name is gonna be over the next few months and years, but it is a bit fragmented for sure right now.
Yeah. When it comes to revenue and attribution in this new space, I think there's still a lot of question marks there. At Profound, how we start to tie all this stuff together is we ask people, how'd you hear about us when you submit a lead form for Profound, which gives me, the marketing team, the whole team at Profound, great insight into, did you find us on ChatGPT? Did you find us on Perplexity? Did you find us somewhere else? And so that's kind of one way we can back into how we figure out some of the attribution here. What have you seen with your clients or your work of how people are starting to tie revenue and ROI to the space at all?
All right, so the way I think about measurement in the space is we stratify it into 3 buckets. It's performance metrics, channel metrics, input metrics, right? And performance metrics don't change. Like at the end of the day, how much referral traffic came to your site from a given channel, and then what do those people do, right? Then you have channel metrics like your share of voice, your citation rate, citation sentiment. And then you have the things that you actually can like manipulate. So on the input metrics, I would say like passage relevance scores, your rankings for the synthetic queries for the query fan out, the things like how much bot activity is a given page getting. Like those are all things that you can adjust to ultimately impact what happens. And then beyond that, we're starting to see brands like, because the thing is, these channels more operate like brand channels than they do performance channels because there's a lot less referral traffic that happens. And so we're having clients start to say things like, oh, we should do brand lift studies to see what the impact is from that. But all that stuff is pretty early days. But I think we've had a lot of success in framing it in those 3 buckets because clients know, okay, well, the CMO isn't going to care about these input metrics, but these people that are on the ground that are actually doing things, they can make adjustments there.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, I think, the very first thing we are doing as a team, it's pretty obvious, but just like setting up AI search or LLM search as its own kind of like segment within Google Analytics or whatever analytics tool we're using, so we can get a direct understanding of when you group all these tools together, how much traffic and engagement and conversions and everything is it really generating. We are using Profound, so we have kind of like a new benchmark audit kind of that we're doing for our clients that are engaged in what we're calling AEO. So we just get an understanding of with like Profound's metrics, what does the competitive landscape look like? What are the different topics that we want to be paying attention to? What is the sentiment around those topics? And then things like trying to understand demand for a brand. So looking at things like branded impressions in Search Console, even though that became pretty difficult when Google changed impressions on us 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I mean, right now, Mike just mentioned, it's all evolving and changing really quickly. And I do hope that the LLM companies give us more first-party data around how people are using their products. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah, a GSC for ChatGPT would be a game changer.
Yes, please. Yeah. If you're listening, Sam Altman, please, we need that.
For sure. Okay, and so speaking of model evolution, I think when GPT-5 came out, a lot of companies that I talked to noticed a drop in referral traffic, and we saw some of that chatter online as well. And do you think it's fair to say that that was maybe the first major algorithm update in the world of AI search compared to old search? And then do you think there are more of those coming? And then how should we in companies think about preparing for how these models can evolve and how their underlying citation data set can also seemingly change on a whim as well? And Lily, I'll start with you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was the first, but as far as looking at the data, to me that felt like one of the most significant changes in how companies are being cited. And I don't think it's going to be the last one. I do think that'll be something we start to see pretty routinely, just the same way we have with search engines. I anticipate that as more and more people kind of jump on the bandwagon of trying to manipulate AI answers and do relatively spammy things. You know, it took Google 25 years and they're still evolving as far as fighting spam and combating spam and having a web spam team and spam updates and things like that. I think that LLMs will have no choice but to do the same thing over time. I don't know if they're going to tell us about that, but I think we're going to start to see that in the results.
I would say that every time we have like the data refresh for the model is the update, because, you know, when a query deserves grounding, for lack of a better term, changes based on what they feel the model itself can answer. So if previously like a given company wasn't a part of that data set that was trained on, then they always had to go out to the web to do that. Whereas if they appear more after they were trained again, then they don't have to go out to the web as much. So I think fundamentally every time they update the model is when the referral traffic might change.
Okay. And then I know historically in traditional SEO that Google has been, I don't know if it's fair to say they've been good at being like proactive with some of their communication, but they have definitely maybe communicated a lot more than say OpenAI has when those things have changed. And so do you see a world where the major model providers start to adopt more of a Google mindset and kind of like give more of a heads up that things are changing and like what the underlying data kind of looks like there? Or do you think they'll be like, hey, new model, go have at it and figure out what's going to happen afterwards? Mike?
I would hope so. But like marketers aren't really their audience. Their audience is like developers and the world at large. And even with Google, like we're pretty tertiary as far as what they care about, right? Like as an example, they have Google I/O, which is a huge developer conference that they spend tens of millions of dollars on. And for SEOs, they literally put us in a back room where there's only like 20 of us and they give us snacks and chips and that's it. You know what I mean? So like, I would be shocked. I would love it, but I would be shocked if OpenAI started to care.
I'm surprised they gave you snacks at all. Yeah, I think right now they have no incentive, especially if people are really trying to spam these platforms, obviously. I think with Google, you know, there was kind of that original incentive because they talk to advertisers, right? And that kind of leads to like, okay, SEOs can go use the keyword planner that, you know, like I think that if OpenAI starts to give, you know, a platform to ads, they're probably going to be more incentivized to kind of have these conversations with the community. But as it stands right now, I don't really see, I know a lot of us have been like begging them to give us any insights, but I don't really see why they have any incentive to currently.
I know like the disincentive there is that you don't want to kind of give the roadmap to maybe bad actors who will try and manipulate results. What do you think are some of the risks that maybe brands might have someone internally who wants to move super quickly and just like jump up their rankings, but like what do you think the risks are of a brand who maybe wants to do some maybe dubious actions to get a short-term result and maybe kind of mortgage some of the longer-term strategy? Like, do you think there's a risk that a brand could get deplatformed within OpenAI and some of these models too?
Well, my question back to you is what is dubious? There's no guidelines for ChatGPT, right? Like with Google, there's a series of guidelines that say you can't do this if you want to be in Google. And so I think a lot of people are just like applying those same ideas to ChatGPT, but those things aren't necessarily against the law. Like cloaking is not against the law. Buying links is not against the law. It's just that Google says don't do those things. And in fact, there's a lot of people and platforms that are cloaking for large language models, right? Like they're either serving their content as just Markdown instead of the full HTML experience, or they're adding additional content that they don't show to Google. Again, not against the law, but they will allow you to give more visibility in these platforms. So I would say until OpenAI says like, hey, here's our guidelines, do whatever's gonna work for you. The sound of silence.
Yeah, I mean, just because it's not against the law, I think doesn't mean that it's not against the best interests of the product that they're building, right? So I think if thousands or millions of people learn that you can put white text on a white background and that influences what appears in large language models, OpenAI at some point is going to cut that off. Whether or not they tell us is a different thing, right? But I think they want to provide a good experience for their users, and if too many people are spamming something, that can affect the end user experience.
Mike, did you have anything to add to that?
Listen. The way I look at this is, again, like, if you add additional content that answers a question for a user to a page, but you're like, hey, this is maybe not a good experience for my user, I don't see a problem with that if it's not against the guidelines. Like that answer is feeding a user down the line, and it's valuable in the ChatGPT context, so use that. But again, if there are guidelines that say like, hey, we don't allow that, then yeah, absolutely do not do that.
Can I add one last thing? So yes, but you also, I mean, for me at least, I think we have to think a lot about Google, whether or not we want to. Like, at the end of the day, Google does have guidelines, and Bing does have guidelines. So if you're doing something for ChatGPT, assuming that's an indexable page that search engines can also see, and you're doing a lot of white text on a white background, or you're doing a lot of cloaking or whatever it is, that goes against Google and Bing's guidelines. So like if it's very hard, right? You don't want to necessarily be doing something just for AI search if it's detrimental to organic search, because also we have to think about where things are going with Gemini, right? We talk a lot about ChatGPT, but Gemini is seeing a rapid adoption, in the last few months. So I feel like you don't want to cut yourself short as far as visibility and search.
Final point of clarification. I was not saying to do that for Google. I'm saying detect the user agent specifically not for Google and do that. Don't do that for Google ever. Don't go against Google's guidelines. I've had a long career in this space. I've been through a lot of things. Do not ever piss off Google. But,
Amen.
Sam don't know what's going on, so get in there.
Awesome. Okay, and so as we wrap up here, my final question for you both is, what is one takeaway that folks in this room can go home with that will help maybe help them think about the future a little bit better, help them improve some of their visibility, or just like a tactic you're seeing work with your clients right now? And Lily, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Josh and Sartaj touched on as far as like having those pages that are kind of built for agents, not necessarily for humans as much. I think that gets into this really interesting kind of new area that we're getting into. Not necessarily like, for me, it's not like writing for machines, not writing for humans, but it's adding that extra layer of information that would be helpful for agents that we haven't necessarily written for humans. Or maybe we've previously assumed that humans kind of understand something, maybe visually, or maybe like it's implied in your marketing, but it's not necessarily clear or transparent for agents. I think that there's a lot of information and content that we need to start adding to our websites, to our social media, to our marketing, to make things completely like unambiguous, right? Like, what is the actual clear statement from the brand that answers this question? So we're doing a lot of, like Mike mentioned, like query fan out, that the type of optimization to kind of anticipate what are all the different questions that people might be asking around this brand and products and services, and making sure all of that is extremely transparent and clear on the website.
I would say recognize that this space is changing rapidly and dramatically, and understand that there are going to be unique opportunities on the AI search side that don't really speak to classic search. Like the idea of being able to integrate software platforms, memory, like all these sorts of things are going to be uncharted territory for where we're going. So the more that we keep looking at everything with the classic SEO lens, the more you're going to miss out on what these new opportunities are. That's not to say that you ignore all the classic SEO stuff, because again, there's a lot of overlap right now, but in the future, there's going to be a lot less overlap. And the last thing I'll say is that we have a whole manual called the AI Search Manual. You can Google it. And it's 20 chapters on like how this stuff actually works and what to do here. And that's all I got.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you both for coming here. Thank you, everyone.